and enthusiasm about this presentation. We were supposed to have Tanya, our dear friend, as our MC and host. She was joining us from Caribbean. I think maybe she has faced a technical internet issue, so I'm gonna start and taking over her role too. I am actually, my name is Shauheen. I'm the founder of the company called Visena. It's a natural psychedelic drug discovery, and also co-founder of Magi Ancestral Supplements, who has been the host of this event. And today I have here a very dear friend and teacher for me, Katherine Lawson, who I actually got to learn about her work through Instagram. And we reached out to her. She has been a psychotherapist and healer in the space of working with dreams and basically dream healing. And I'll leave it to her, her presentation, to open it up more about what she does. I'm going to go very quickly, sharing a little bit about the structure of today's presentation. So we start with I have like 25 minutes. The first 25 minutes, I'll speak about basically the use of hormonal compounds and Syrian Rue in general, in the ancestral lineage in different traditions. And the second part is about the neuropharmacology and the subjective experience of these compounds. And then from there, where we get to how we can use these pharmacologies, I'll leave it to Katherine to take it from there. Then I'll join to share a little bit about like the work that we do in Ancestral Magi and the products that we have developed. And then we'll open it up for Q&A. For Q&A, I'll suggest you, if it's possible, to leave your question here, because there might be many of the questions that are similar. So we take note of those, but we would love everybody just to, at that point, just to turn on their videos. We would love this to be also a space for community building, for all of you that have been interested in this topic, just to open up your videos, and then if you have any question, then we can just like hear your questions from there, and we'll try to respond as much as we can. And then there are also two announcements about like how we can continue working with each other and working with our supplements that I'll leave it at the end. Without further ado, I start with kind of like very quickly. I introduce myself a little bit, and I'm gonna just go read the bio of Katherine, and then I'll start after that. So Katherine is our guest today. I really appreciate her time. Katherine Lawson is a Palo Alto-based integrative mental health specialist, a certified embodied imagination practitioner, consultant, psycho-spiritual counselor, and an international speaker. She has spent nearly 2 decades examining the intersections between healing, dreaming, mysticism, and psychedelics. As a survivor of early childhood trauma, cancer, and nearly losing a child to addiction, she teaches and utilizes holistic therapies for PTSD and other types of unprocessed wounds, as well as sharing stories of healing. She's fascinated by the interactions between the brain, mind, body, and personality, as well as the powerful ways in which societal and spiritual factors affect health and happiness. She is the co-founder of Awake in the Dream School of Integrative Consciousness, an online psychedelic educational platform, and the author of Dream Work for Growth and Healing, a guided dream journal. And
thank you, Shauheen. Thank you for getting through all of that. And I'll, I can share a little bit more when it's my turn. I look forward to hearing about you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And a little bit about just about my background. We started Visena, which was one of the early stage drug kind of psychedelic companies in the psychedelics space back in 2019. Our focus was only on natural compounds. I live in Canada, Vancouver. At the moment, I'm actually joining you from Iran, Tehran, where I'm visiting my sister and my mom. And also I have been exploring further about these compounds in our own lineage from the Zoroastrian background as well as after Islam. So in 2021, we started getting into a very thorough study of different compounds and their lineage, working mostly with Dennis McKenna at that time and McKenna Academy. That took us to a journey of ethnopharmacological search for psychoactive drugs and how these different psychoactive compounds have affected human consciousness over time. So from there, we got into mostly, our work has been mostly around neuropsychopharmacology, as well as basically clinical studies of different compounds. So we focus mostly on harmala compounds, as well as some of the tryptamines on a study level. The harmala compounds have been the focus of our studies for the past 3.5 years, mostly beta-carbolines and their subjective and neuropsychological effects that are kind of a little bit unknown, and also they're understudied, and there's some myth about them, so they haven't been further studied for better understanding. So I hope that today's presentation shares some of the new information that we have got from our research about these compounds, as well as from the clinical data that we have. We had about 50 people participating in our clinical studies. These are all very low cost. These are not official clinical studies. These are studying exactly as a oneirogen or psychonaut, and then getting a lot of data. Specifically, these data have been very quantitative. We have had these anecdotal data that we can have from our own subjective experience, but what opened the door for us to have a better understanding about these compounds was being able to have a lot of biomarkers, from brainwave, heart rate, sleep patterns, and multiple biomarkers, and following those, plus what we learned from our own subjective experiences and the experience of the other participants, they got us to where we are today. In 2022, we decided to have what we have as a legal compounds, non-schedule release, for access to, to basically for people to have access to them. And then that was the time that we launched Ancestral Magi. So with this introduction, I'll get you directly to the presentation and sharing about today's topic. Okay. Okay, so the topic of, so let me just check if there's any question. Okay, great. So do you have my slide, Catherine? You see my slide? Okay, great, awesome. So ancestral Syrian Rue plant-based medicines. We call Syrian Rue Esfand or Spand in Farsi. There's also another name, Peganum harmala, but mostly in the West, they are known as Syrian Rue. So the part one of my presentation is about the ancestral roots of using beta-carbolines for psycho-spiritual journeys. So I start with what we know. So what we know about beta-carbolines mostly come from ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is a combination of Banisteriopsis caapi, basically the bark of Banisteriopsis caapi, plus the leaves of Psychotria viridis, which is basically the first one gives us the beta-carbolines, and the second one, the DMT. So I just recently learned that yahe and ayahuasca are two different things. I always thought that we call the wine yahe, but basically yahe is a combination of Banisteriopsis copy, and another plant that contains DMT, which is Dilopteris cabrerana. And so there are different parts of Amazon that they're having access to this plant, and they're making yahe, and the other parts they're making ayahuasca. So ayahuasca is an admixture. The main two compounds, as you know, are DMT and also from the beta-carbolines, what we get from the bark when they are basically hammering their bark, and then they're kind of cooking it with the leaves of chacruna. So we get to this like very thick brew. At the beginning is very more diluted, and then like they keep just adding and then evaporating, the water to make it more thick. So what we know mostly in the West from the work of most of the ethnobotanists that traveled earlier, like around 60s, 70s to Amazon, is that ayahuasca is a psychedelic brew. So that DMT is what is psychedelic, and because DMT is not orally active, what makes it active is actually a group of monoamine oxidase inhibitors that they are counted as what potentiates the effect of ayahuasca. And basically just like our understanding about beta-carbolines stays there, that they are beta-carbolines. Basically beta-carbolines are MAOI, and they are making the effects longer or deeper. So some of the facts about ayahuasca is that ayahuasca has many kinds, even though we know these as these two group of compounds, DMT and beta-carbolines. There have been different type of ayahuasca with other additives. The other fact is that there has been part of basically basically just earlier on, and there are some of the works of some of the other ethnobotanists that they have reported that some of the shamans and priests have used only the vine, which is the beta-carboline, as ayahuasca. So this is kind of like, this is a data that I got from this paper, that there were the priests from 1700 that they drank only the wine as the brew. And then the other interesting fact is that Banistriopsis contain banistrine, which banistrine is actually the other name for harmine, or we also call it telepathine. So this telepathine tells us a lot about why they have been using these compounds. And then last but not least, basically there are psychoactive experience of DMT and ayahuasca are different. If any of you have tried DMT alone and then have basically sat in an ayahuasca session, you have realized that how these brews are different. So these are some of the visions that we get from like you've seen. These are the work of Pablo Amaringo, that as you see, like there's always basically something about like in the visions is always collective. There is this blend of nature and human that happens. There are visions from the other times, cities underwater, and like there are other entities with other faces. There are UFOs. These are like very old paintings, but still you see these visions from the past. So this is what we mostly know about beta-carbolines. So from here, I want to take your attention to this part of the world, like somewhere basically between Iran, like north of Iran, where Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and kind of like Western China is, which is, we call it this area Iran Shah, or like where the ancient Iran was. And then from there, kind of like looking into around like 4,000 years ago, where the Indo-Iranian actually came to this land, and then they basically separated, like part of them, they came to this region of Iran, and then the other part basically they moved like down to India. So from these two groups, two different I would call the wisdom tradition at that time came. It was, one of them was Vedic culture, and the other one was Gothic culture, which was related to Zarathustra, the Iranian priest and philosopher and prophet. So we had paganism and shamanism in about like these are about 2000 BC. It's about 4,000 years ago. So paganism, there were cults of water and fire that there's still like kind of signs of them in many of the ruins in the Persepolis, and like also in the Elamian side, which is the west of Iran. And there have been a sacrifice of animals, like the altars for let's say there have been cult of fire, and different prayers related to these traditions. mostly these are related to paganism, but there were gods that came from paganism actually to later on to the religion. And then there were signs of shamanism in Iran, and some of these signs I can share with you. One of them is that, in shamanism, you have double soul. You have a higher self, and then you have a kind of like a material body. So we have something like that in most of the shamanic traditions. We had the same thing in Zoroastrianism, which we have a higher self. And then there were use of intoxicants in the kind of like shamanism before. These are like more segregated before they become a philosophy that they followed Zarathustra. There were priests in Iran. There were cattle runners. They were called moges, or like the combination. Basically, the plural name is Magi, like Magi, the three wise men that you also have heard their names. And then the practices that they were participating, they had like shamanic trances, like they were warriors basically having drinks before going to war, to have battle theory. And also Iran also was kind of surrounded by other shamanic practices, like what was happening in Siberia. So this picture at the bottom is actually from Tepesialk, which is a 6,000 BC. These are way, way older than these movements or migration to Iran. But interestingly, this was something that I actually found from my own study when I got deeper. So Mircea Eliade, who you know him from his famous book Shamanism, he actually has this in his book that like the magical religious value of intoxication for achieving ecstasy is of Iranian origin. And that was very interesting for me also as an Iranian to learn about this. A little bit like this is just very quickly to have an understanding of like where we are with the history of Iran. Like we have about 1,300 years of like Islam in Iran, what's currently happening. And then before that, for about another more than 1,000 year, about kind of like 1,500, there were Zoroastrianism, or they call it Mazda Yasna, which is like a very old Iranian religion that came from Zarathustra. But mostly what was happening in Iran, there were like very local priests, and then they were called again like Magi. And then Magi actually at some point started to follow Zarathustra's teaching and philosophy. And then from there, that was what Zoroastrianism became first of all, a philosophy that was mostly adopted during the Achaemenid time, and then after that it became a kind of like a state religion during the Sassanid time. So this is where we know the kind of the West and East know Magi through the three wise men, which went basically to visit Jesus, the newborn Jesus. This is kind of around exactly the time in between the Sassanid time, which Zoroastrianism became a state religion, and before that, that was not a state religion. It was mostly just a state of kind of like a state of mind or a philosophy. And again, some other connections is the time of Rumi and Hafez. As you see, these are around the Safavid time, like around like 1,000, a little bit after 1,000, 1,200, like around 1220. And then like we have the contemporary time of today. So with that, Zarathustra, that most of you may know him through the book of Nietzsche, was this basically Iranian philosopher, teacher, and priest, one of the moges, one of the priests that actually came as a protagonist. He came to basically create some reforms to the shamanic and pagan belief in Iran. And some of the reforms that he did was actually he stopped the sacrifice of animals. And also they're saying that he also disapproved the use of intoxicant. That's why most of the Zoroastrians today are not like basically just relating their religion to any type of psychoactive. So that if you talk to any Zoroastrians, probably they don't know anything about Haoma. But again, what is very interesting is that he actually created this monotheistic philosophy based on freedom of choice, on paganism and shamanism, which has been, I would call it, the fundamental of morality in Iran since kind of like 3,500 years ago. again, like mostly people know in the West Zarathustra through the work of Nietzsche. And then what he actually came up with, this is the sign of Faravashi, which is the sign of the double soul. This is exactly the higher self, that we want to kind of like in our life, we thrive to go toward the higher self. And then basically there are two worlds, which is the Mana, we call it Mana or Menag and Giti. And Menag is basically the life after death. And then there were practices to see through this life, which actually comes from intoxication. So he actually came up with this idea of the good mind, which stayed in Iran to become the source of good thoughts, good deed, good words, which are the main, basically the main, this is not the trilogy, but the main teachings in Zoroastrianism. So Homa has been the intoxicant that Zoroastrians, have been using. This is mostly within the caste of Magi. It was not like that everybody knew about this. There is an equivalent to Home in the Vedic culture, which is Som or Soma. But again, Soma, like we are here only focusing on Homa. And the reason for that is because most of the information about Homa was transcribed 1,000 years after, basically when the Rig Veda was written. And the information about this is more accurate. So the meaning of Homa and Soma, the meaning of the word is actually to press out. So even though most of the people, they think that it was just a plant, it was not a plant, it was always a mixture. So Magi had this kind of pharmacological knowledge about mixing different compounds, even in different settings, to induce these different states of mind, to have access to depending on the setting. So drinking Homa basically was to see through the Menag. So Menag is the realm of divine that I shared with you in the previous slide. And then having access to the Menag before dying was why priests were taking Homa for. So it's exactly the idea of die before you die that has been used, different tradition has been used by Rumi as well, and also in the West. So Homa is also known as this liquid, omniscient wisdom, that was brought to Zarathustra by Ahura Mazda. And Ahura Mazda in Iran, we were taught that Ahura Mazda was the god or the higher god, but like if you just read more about Zoroastrianism and as a philosophy, not as a religion, Ahura Mazda is exactly the highest wisdom, which is the consciousness, and it's very interesting at that time, there was this understanding of the highest wisdom. So there are some referrals to the use of Homa in Gatha and Avesta. Gatha is basically the direct poem of Zarathustra, and Avesta is actually like basically the rest of the teaching that came through the time, with the other Magi. So there are two referrals, like most of them are indirect in the Gatha to the Home. One of them is referring to Home as Durusha. So Durusha is actually like something that they were burning, which what we understand is that if Harmel or Harmala basically.
There we go.
Yes. Was the source of Homa. So they were also burning Espand or burning these seeds, which is, we're still like burning them in Iran, but people just like, they see it mostly as to reverting the evil eye or the evil energy. And some people, they think that is superstition. But there's also some referral to basically to the filthiness of this intoxicant. That's where most of today's Mubed or Magi, they're saying that like Zarathustra actually disapproved this. But anyway, for example, like this is coming from Avesta, which says that I call down, O yellow Homa, your intoxicating power, strength, victoriousness, ability to grant health, curativeness, prosperity, growth, force for entire body, complete knowledge, and I call down this that I may go about among beings, overcoming hostility, defending the light. So as you see, it's exactly, the referral is very similar to the referral of intoxicant, something like ayahuasca. Sorry, can you hear me? I just see some messages in the Can somebody just maybe a text just to confirm I'm not talking for myself?
You're all
Yes,
set
cool.
now. You froze just for a
Awesome.
minute.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so back to, so in Avestan term, madhu, or we call in Farsi called madhush, is exactly like what makes you intoxicated, like out of your mind. There was in Avesta, there is no botanical description. It just call it yellow, or like it has some referral to their color. So as you see, it's like it has medicinal properties, and then there's another referral that it actually grows in the mountain. So Magi or Mog, there were these priests. So in the stories of the priests, there have been different referrals to the priest. Actually, these are in the text. That's how actually we found this, and we were looked for these subjective experiences. So there are 4 or 5. There are actually 5 of them. Like I'm going to take you through 2 of them. One of them is actually the journey of Zarathustra. The other one is actually the time the king during the Zarathustra Vishtas. And there's actually another righteous man called Arda Viraz or Viraz, who was basically somebody who was sent, to the other realm, to the Menak, to bring message, by intoxication. So if you look into this, is coming from Bondahesh, which is one of the other texts of Zarathustra, basically Zoroastrianism. So he actually had this. He was given Haoma by Ur Mazda or Ahura Mazda, by higher consciousness, and then he had this 7 days out of body journey. So when he comes back, when Zarathustra has his revelation, he says, "I saw things in the pleasant Ur Mazda created dream. I have not yet recovered from the dream." So as you see, the subjective experience is referred to as dream or a dreamy state. Again, this is the journey of Arda Viraz. So this is probably the most complicated account of taking intoxicant with all the details. There is a book about this, the book of Arda Viraz. If you search it, it's like an 8,000 words book it's available actually on Google. That is the most explicit story of somebody taking an intoxicant. Like it even mentions how many cups he drinks and then he just have this like basically out of body journey. So he was sent by the Magi to go to the Menak to check if basically the liturgy or if the practice of Zoroastrianism was to the right gods. So he basically just was sent to bring message for the people at that time. So exactly like some of the paintings of Amaringo. So these are some of the paintings when he sits by the fire before like this picture, previous picture is when this is actually one of the fire temples in Iran. It's called Farambagh, which is like a fire temple close to Fars. It's fully ruined now. And this is kind of before going to the other, before drinking the intoxicant, that he sits by the fire. His set intention is exactly like what's happening with set and setting. And then he has this, out of like 7 days out of body journey, or he just go to dream. And then when he comes back, he just shares everything about his dream, which is basically the story of this book. So you may ask, why Zoroastrianism basically lost this intoxicant? The reason is that, first of all, it was always kept within the caste of priests and elites. It was not, basically used like ayahuasca. Even ayahuasca was being only, drank by shamans earlier. But when Islam actually came to Iran and invaded Iran, so the other thing was that they didn't want to relate a book of basically that they were people of book. They didn't want to relate their religion to the use of, a psychoactive intoxicant. This is another reason that the intoxicant like slowly just shied away from that. And then there was also, like after the conquest of Islam, there was the fear of being related to sorcery, and then being executed or killed. So that's why like these are kind of like slowly, was removed from the religion. So if we want to call it the elixir of truth, as been referred to in Avesta. So we are here, like we have ayahuasca, versus, Haoma, which this is kind of like a timeline, 900 versus 2000 BC, 900 BC. They were both intoxicating. There have been both extract. We know mostly about the botanical identity of yahe or ayahuasca. There are always some additives added to that. And then Haoma, I'll take you through that in the next 2 slides. Basically, there were different type, like there have been different type of ayahuasca. There have been different type of Haoma, and they call that like there is this word sonaderos, which is again related to dreamlike, and there's the start, which is actually we call one of our supplements start, which relates to the mind to sprawl out to wider or to broader consciousness. They were both taken in rituals for ordeal or initiation, and then they were just basically just different purposes, from confrontation with dream, kind of death, like awareness from the other realms, and then experiencing the supernatural, which was common in both of them. So in terms of the botanical identity, I'm sure that like many of you know that there is a book about Soma, relating Soma to Amanita muscaria mushroom. That's kind of like, that's very different from the topic about Haoma, but I can talk about that in the Q&A. So there in Iran today, what is called Haoma is actually this stimulant called ephedra, which is its effect is more like MDMA effect. And there's also a plant, which is a dream-inducing plant, or we call it a oneirogen or hypnagogen. So this is ephedra, which again, today in Iran, they call it home as a plant. It's very abundant in the flora of Iran, but there is doubts that this was the main source of Haoma. And the reason for that is that like most of the referrals are referring to a dreamy state, but like from the right of the bat, what these stimulant does is that they revert sleep. So this is one of the reasons that they are saying that this was just later on, called because they wanted to just replace the plant. But back to the Pegonum harmala as the main plant. So first of all, Espand or Pegonum harmala in Iran has been a sacred plant. We all have it in our home. We all burn it like from time to time. And the meaning of Espanta means possessing, this numinous power. So there have been a book in around like 1987 by David Flattery, who has been, basically an Iranian studies scholar who actually traveled through Iran from 1960 to 63. And then he collaborated with a Avestan linguist. He actually went through all these ancient texts and read through this. And that's why it makes it very special. So they actually wrote this book called Haoma and Harmaline, which like basically in this book, they share their idea that the main psychoactive compound in Haoma was Pegonum harmala or Espand. So this work is kind of like supported by the work of Claudio Naranjo, who was a Chilean psychiatrist who actually injected harmaline, in an IV format to, basically for his patients. So Pegonum harmala contains beta-carbolines. As you see, like this is the kind of, it has flower. When the flowers, dries out, like these capsules basically stays out. They're mostly growing wild. These when you have when it dries out, these capsules break, and then you have like kind of these seeds. And then when we extract the seeds, like there are different extraction methodologies that we have used. There are different compounds that come out of it. For example, harmaline, as you see, is yellow, and it's fluorescing yellow, and harmine is kind of like more milky color. And there's also other compounds like harmolol, harmol, tetrahydroharmine. As you see here again, there are like the plant has these harmala compounds almost everywhere, in the plant. So they're in the seeds, mostly in the seeds. They're in the fruits as well, some of the roots as well, and stems. And then comparing again. Beta-carbolines in Pegonum harmala versus B copy from ayahuasca. As you see, this is the distribution of, this is the very important information that like the Banistria or Banistria's copy mostly has tetrahydroharmine versus Pegonum harmala mostly has harmaline. So if you have ever sat in an ayahuasca session that they have made their ayahuasca with Pegonum harmala, that's probably a terrible idea, because the effect could be very different. And this is probably where the effect comes from. The amount of harmine is pretty much the same. It's mostly like they're saying that there are about 5 to 10 times more in Banistria's copy than, in Pegonum harmala than in Banistria's copy. And they're just basically just growing wild. They're growing very fast. And versus, let's say, the ecologically endangered, Banistria's copy. So here, I want to just like bring your attention. This is the receptor bindings of harmine and harmaline. As you see, they're MAOI. Like harmine is a very strong MAOI, MAOA, and harmaline too. Harmaline has some binding to 5-HT receptors, like most of the dopaminergic receptor, other energetic receptors, but and harmine, like harmine mostly like is a very strong MAOI, but something that is kind of like very interesting here, like, and this is something very understood, is a receptor called I1, I2, which they are called basically imidazoline receptors, and they're counted as a group of other nergic receptors, but like there's very little information about these receptors. So I want to just like bring your attention to these two, and then I'll take you to the rest of the presentation. So just to have a kind of like a wrap up, what was Haoma? Haoma was a liquid extract. The main compound was Pegonum harmala because of their oneirogenic or dream-inducing effect, and they were adding different additives. They were adding ephedrine, they were adding atropine alkaloid, tropin alkaloids too. So there is another. You see that how things are unfolding. This is actually another recent translation of Gotha, which is again the book of Zarathustra from 2023, that it actually refers to Haoma. As you see here, it says that Zarathustra from this early and active Zotar, basically it refers to the diarrhea of these priests who were drinking Haoma. So they were having this word mokhrem or mokrem, according refers to diarrhea of Haoma, the consuming priests. And they're also, as you see, like if you have done ayahuasca, you see that like vomiting and also diarrhea are the basically the effect of these, the physiological effect of these compounds. So one more time, I'm just checking. Am I? Can you hear me? If somebody can just send a text in the chat. Yes.
All good.
Okay, great, awesome. Okay, so this was Iran, and again, this is another 2023 research that came about a basically Ptolemaic, Egyptian waste that recently they did some mass spec analysis. This is there are many researchers on this, on this study from Milan to Florida, and actually what they actually found also was that they revealed the trace of Pegonum harmala. So as you see, this is the third wisdom tradition that they had the trace of beta-carbolines. So this is a summary of what I had for the first part. There have been 3 ancient wisdom traditions that they were imbibing these psychoactive potions or brew for spiritual journeys containing beta-carbolines. So in Amazonian shamans, they had B copy from plus DMT and other additives. In Iran, they had Pegonum harmala, ephedrine, and tropin alkaloids. And in ancient Egypt, actually, they had the Pegonum harmala plus blue lotus or water lily alkaloids. So this is the first part of my presentation. I guess we started a little bit late. I am having probably another 10 minutes, and then I'll pass it to Katherine. So the second part of my presentation is actually about the neuropharmacology and subjective experience of dreamlike states that are induced by beta-carbolines. Before going to that, I want to just share a miraculous molecule with you, because it's not only psychoactive, this is not only neuropsychological, this has different properties. So harmine or telepathine or banistrine. So these are the same name for the same compound. So as you see, it has just miraculous properties, like health properties for a human. They are on the neurophysiological, so they're anti-Alzheimer. Basically, they are slowing down any neurodegenerative diseases. It's either, let's say, latest stage, which is Alzheimer, Parkinson, Huntington, or any of those, or even earliest stage, which is Down syndrome. So it can be used as the Down syndrome treatment too. They have neuroprotective effect, and then they boost memory at encoding with the memory formation. They basically participate in neurogenesis. The neurogenesis is mostly an in vitro study. And then on the neuropsychological, they're antidepressive, anti-addictive. They can help with opiate or cocaine addiction. They're also oneirogens or hypnogogens. Hypnogogens, we call them pre-oneirogens too. They're dream-inducing. These dreamy states that I'll walk you through in the next slides. And then there are some other properties. They're anti-inflammatory, they're non-opioid analgesic, they're antibacterial, antioxidant, anti-cancer. These are probably just 60 papers that we have gone through, and then it's crazy how much this molecule can be used in different settings. anti-warming, anti-aging. Just related to this anti-aging, this is a 2021 paper from the Frontiers in Aging Neuroscience that it actually refers to the fact that every mammalian has endogenous harmine in their blood, and then they have basically tracked that basically the amount of harmine over the age can be counted basically as a biomarker for aging, also a biomarker for Alzheimer's disease. It means that if you get exogenous harmine, that can probably just slow down, basically any sign of basically neurodamage or also aging. So this paper is actually coming from some Chinese researchers. I put the name and the number of the paper if you want to just follow that later. Now I want to just take you back to this slide, this neuropharmacological receptor binding about basically this imidazolin 1 and 2. So there is actually a study on the animal study on the effect of imidazolin 1 and 2. As I said, they are kind of as a derivative of other adrenergic receptors, but they have been only tested in animals, in mice and rats. And interestingly, the effect that they are creating is counted as hypnotic state resembling sleep, or a sleep-like state. So this is exactly the effect that kind of overlooked, as most of us know beta-carbolines only as MAOI. So it seems like what we have discovered is that imidazolin could be the main reason for this dreamlike state that beta-carbolines induce. So, and through that, we call harmine and harmaline and tetrahydroline. Most of the beta-carbolines, they are counted as oneirogens, or dream-inducing, or there are some books they basically have this categorization as pre-oneirogens, which are mostly relating to this liminal state between sleep and dream. Basically, you are dreaming where you still have your consciousness active, your conscious mind active. So oneirophrenic and hypnagogic dreamlike states. So dreamlike states, these are dreamlike states between full wakefulness and the non-REM sleep, when you are not even dreaming. We know, like, basically there are some report that we are even dreaming in non-REM sleep, but I just left it there because this makes everything way more complex. But so these dreamlike states, when you have, like, basically, again, your mind is actively lucid and you can process, but your body is not your physical body anymore. Your body is kind of like dissociated through the dream. So that we call them the dream body. So this is the dreamlike states that we get to receive a lot of information, and we are opening it up here. So one of the properties and the subtle quality of these states is the immediate emergence to consciousness. So immediate receive of knowledge, which can be in the format of a breakthrough or revelation or an epiphany. So these dreamlike states can be basically can happen naturally. They can be accessed through some practices like most of the mindfulness practices, and also they can be the result of taking oneirophrenic or hypnagogic substances. So when we just to separate where I'm referring these two, the best presentation for beta-carbolines is that they're mostly hypnagogic. So they are creating this dreamy state in between dream and wakefulness. We call them, being basically dreaming in wakefulness or being awake in a dream. So, but if you fall asleep, there are also oneirogens, but oneirogens, there are some, for example, mugwort is a oneirogen plant. It makes you to dream a lot when you are fully in a dream. But here you are mostly in this liminal state between when you get into sleep, it's called hypnagogic, and when you're coming out of sleep to wakefulness, it's called hypnopompic. Again, so beta-carbolines, mostly known as oneirogens, these are hypnagogens, and then what are the oneirogens? Jonathan Ott defined oneirogens as a drug that stimulates dream or hypnagogic phenomena in superficial stages of sleep, where hypnagogic refers to drowsiness or preceding sleep or light stage of sleep. So these are mostly coming from our experience, from harmine and harmaline. So what harmine creates, just just a little bit maybe background about like how actually we got here. So when we started to doing these tests as, you know, oneironauts or psychonauts, so we went based on every compounds. These are like under kind of 99.5% compounds, pure compounds. And then we basically took them on different dosage, you know, just alone for every setting. So, and then we combine them. So this is a very complex, I would call like an experimental study for us to be able to have a coverage of different formulation, different dosage, and different state of mind. So these are my subjective experience that I also have kind of compared, for example, with TCAL and PCAL and the work of others and some of the feedbacks that we get. So what Harmeen does, exactly following the name telepathy, is the sense of like basically remote viewing or seeing through another space. So you get to have visions that are very real. It's not like a geometric DMT type vision. It's kind of like you get to open, exactly if you're familiar with like with remote viewing, you get to see somewhere else, something that's happened, like basically just like have vision to that. And then with Harmaline, you know, the Harmaline effect is, this is again mostly coming from the work of Claudio Naranjo, that so the effect is more like tapping into a collective you know thought or collective consciousness or unconsciousness, where your experience is with something that is bigger, the feeling of being held by something, or you want to communicate, you don't have the language, but these are kind of like the closest thing that I can probably, you know, relate a subjective experience as you know, like in words, you know, to you. A little bit about the phenomenology of dreamlike states. So these are in phenomenology, this is very interesting, like how they are looking into this. Basically, this is coming from work of Schatz and Ferguson, that consciousness constantly shifts. Basically, this is how they define consciousness constantly shifts between an infinite number of different planes, which constitutes its mode of reality. And these dreamy liminal states, which is a transition from dreamless sleep to a dream state, there is always an interruption in the flow of consciousness. And then what happens in this interruption? A dreamy state brackets out the world, including the awareness of the body. So this is where our conscious mind gets in touch with the dream body, replacing them with the dream body, dream perception, and imaginal or symbolic world while we are consciously aware. And this culminates in consciousness leaps in our awareness. This is exactly where how a reduction happened, or a reduction in we call this, you know, a revelation, an epiphany. You know, this is what we get, you know, from an ayahuasca sitting, or what you get, you know, for example, like from the past. For example, they were the Magi were doing it with Haoma. So some of these dreamlike states, it doesn't really matter if you're, again, where across this awake or sleepness they are, you know, like, again, that's how we also, you know, developed our supplements. So some of them is, if you dream in wakefulness, basically we call them awake in the dream. This is one state that you can get to have this lucidity and then still dream when you're awake. It can be in this liminal state between falling asleep, which you call, you know, hypnagogia or hypnopampia, or it can be when basically it can be like lucid dreaming, where you're dreaming and then you're aware that you're dreaming, and you can probably change the direction of your dream. So as you see, there are, for example, like lucid dreaming is where you're asleep. You know, there are other techniques like micro naps, which is happening in transition. There's sleep deprivation, you know, which again, like is it a transition? There have been, you know, many like scientists or mystics using these, you know, techniques to get access to these shifts in consciousness. And then there are practices like, you know, deep meditation, plant medicine, you know, or chanting, zikr, you know, like basically breath work or Sufi whirling, and, you know, like many other like mindfulness practices, that they're also giving you access to this dreamy state when the mind can get to a consciousness shift. So this is related to the work of, basically this is the book of the healing journey, the book of Claudio Naranjo. So in his book, he actually has the story of 3 patients that come to him with severe resistive, you know, depression. So there was no other remedy for them. That's why they were kind of like referred to Claudio Naranjo. And he was a psychiatrist. So he actually injects the IV of 10-methoxyharmaline. I recommend you to read this chapter of this, which is very interesting because there is an intuitive, for you as practitioner, there's an intuitive relation between how he guides them after the injection of this basically harmaline dose. So some of the property basically that he just, basically there's physical relaxation, numbness in extremities, eyes closed, visual images from dreamlike sequence, immediate connection to true self. This is very interesting. For example, one of them, immediately 5 minutes after the injection, like he comes with this revelation that everything that I do, everything I say is a distortion. I've been living for years without suspecting what I really am. So this is only 5 minutes after the injection. So as you see, like, it's very, very interesting how these shifts are really happening. And then a spontaneous, basically physiological improvement without getting into logic of pathology roots. So basically there's no information about the pathology, interaction with our own unconscious, conscious of transpersonal experiences is exactly like, you know, the archetypes, dreams, or for example, just knowledge about the language that was, we didn't know anything about it. The name of this chapter is actually Harmaline and the Unconscious, and it actually takes you through how we are tapping to the unconscious, that we don't really understand what's happening and we don't have the language, but we are experiencing it. Some other experiences, like Zarathustra also got his revelation. This is actually coming from Gatha, that he got this through a dream. Dmitry Mendeleev, as you see, like he just had some of the missing part of the element, the table of elements, again coming through his dream. You know, Agos Kakule, like he actually saw this vision of, you know, like the ring of benzene molecule in his dream. And there have been, I wasn't just reading this, it's very interesting that Thomas Edison with this, basically this steel ball that he had, you know, for having quick, you know, naps, and Albert Einstein, Salvador Dali, you know, basically Edgar Allan Poe, and many other you know, artists, or, you know, like basically creators, that they use these states to be able to have access to creativity. So this is just based on collecting everything that I shared, you know, like based on this, ayahuasca is not only a psychedelic experience. Ayahuasca is a psychedelic and hypnagogic, is a superposition of these two you know, subjective experiences. And depending on how basically the dosage of the hormonal compounds are versus the dosage of DMT, you can kind of like turn this knob to one to the other. For example, Santo Daime Church, some of their brews are very rich in beta-carbolines, and as you see, like they're dancing over this, they are not really tripping. And then kind of like this kind of opens it up, you know, to a better understanding of ayahuasca. There's also I wanted to bring this also, like there's another comparison of psychedelics versus this hypnagogens, because like these states also used by many of the mystics, you know, without using any substance. And for example, for most of the serotonergic, this is again a 2020 paper by Manoj Das, who is one of our advisors, that like many of the serotonergic, you know, psychedelics can induce false memory formation or retrieval, or a typical interference in the thinking, which is kind of like a very different path. You know, most of the serotonergic psychedelics just like basically just helps the mind to be more interconnected, and the flow of thoughts, basically we just think a lot to process a lot, you know, from consciousness. But here we are just basically, we are not thinking very actively, we are just present and we are receiving information. So kind of the flow of what we are receiving is a little bit different. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. I'll just leave it to Katherine to take it from here and take you a little bit to the world of dream, and how we can use dream as a medium for therapy.
Hi, that was incredible. So much information, and just reaffirmed for me once again how it is that we found each other, and how much overlap there is in our interests, which will become clear as I proceed with my presentation. So let me share the screen here. And one 1 second. Sorry, first I have to open this. And then share my screen. Okay, can everyone see the presentation?
Yes, thank you.
Terrific. So again, thank you, Shauheen, for all of that incredible information. And I guess you can see as the result, just based on the name of the work and the school that I founded, where there's so much overlap between the qualities and the experiences of these ancient mystic supplements and the dreaming. So a little bit about who I am is that I've launched a school called Awaken the Dream, and we train different kinds of wellness practitioners, therapists, to help people prepare for and integrate psychedelic experiences. But sort of the basis of a lot of our training is a dream work practice that I developed that applies perfectly well to a psychedelic experience to help integrate that experience into the waking world. But over the past 20 years or so, I have been researching, both in my master's program and in my doctoral dissertation, the parallels between mysticism, dreaming, and psychedelic experiences. And as a result of those studies, I've come to the conclusion that there's so much in common between them. And I base the belief really on my own personal experiences as well, along with the experiences of hundreds of people that I've worked with as a practitioner of embodied imagination dream work. And I'll get more into that. I've also been affiliated with MAPS, which you're all probably familiar with as a plant medicine integration specialist over the past 8 years. So some of my understandings come from that as well. So a little bit more background is basically just how I came to be so focused as a psychotherapist on the properties of dreaming, mysticism, and psychedelics. During my master's, I wrote my master's thesis on the healing practices of dream work for PTSD and in particular sexual trauma. And some of that came out of my master's program was focused on depth psychotherapy, which is very much focused in archetypal psychology and Jungian psychology. It also came out of hearing from people and having my own experience of repetitive dreaming and nightmares. And I came to understand that there was so much information in these repetitive dreams and nightmares that weren't merely meant to disturb us or make us uncomfortable, but actually to help us to bring into consciousness material that we may have submerged at some point and that would be valuable in continuing on with our lives in a more healthy way. And so I began to dig very deeply into the value of dream work in healing trauma and PTSD, wrote my master's thesis on that, and began to practice. And what I learned in practicing as a psychotherapist, as people began to bring me their traumas and their grief and anxieties and their life experiences, was that the dream work was actually very, very efficient, because the dreams were offering up to people material that they weren't necessarily aware of in their conscious life in a symbolic form, that once they could integrate that material, for one, the nightmares and the repetitive dreams would go away, but also they would sort of bring back together disparate parts of themselves that had broken off in order to heal and to lead much more fulfilling lives. And so I decided at a certain point to pursue a certification. It's a 3-year certification in a new practice of dream work called embodied imagination, which is practicing dream work in a hypnagogic state, which thank you so much, Shauheen, for kind of spelling that out, but also in an embodied way. So we come into relationship with the images from visionary experiences in dreams in an embodied way that affects our parasympathetic nervous system, and also our all of us, basically affects us holistically for healing. Later on, I decided to pursue a doctorate in psychology. And what happened is, when about the first semester of pursuing that doctorate, I got a cancer diagnosis. And during my treatment, I came to understand in an even more deep way that we are holistic beings. And if our mind, body, and spirit aren't working all together, we aren't going to heal as well as we possibly could. So while the doctors were, doing everything that they could to save my body, I was having, symptoms of CPTSD. I was facing my own mortality. And so by the time I was finished with my cancer treatment, I used embodied imagination while I was in treatment, and that was extremely, extremely helpful. I decided that I no longer wanted to pursue a doctorate in East-West psychology, and I got my doctorate in mind-body medicine because I wanted to present to people the idea that we heal better when we approach our healing from mind, body, spirit perspective. Let's see why that's not switching. There we go. So in my studies in depth psychotherapy, I learned about this Iranologist named Henri Corbin, who was studying the Persian mysticism. And basically, he wrote a remarkable paper called Mundus Imaginalis. And basically, he talked about the real world that lies between matter and spirit. He talked about the imagination and how the imagination is really the source of everything, because if we cannot imagine it, then it doesn't exist. He talked about liminal space. And basically, that set me off on really diving into embodied imagination as my main practice for helping people to heal. So what is embodied imagination? Embodied imagination is a practice where we revisit a dream while in a hypnagogic state. So during the practice, we take people into we take them through a body scan so that they have a baseline to know where they are. It's a dual state of consciousness, and they're in that sweet spot in between that Shauheen was describing, where you most easily remember your dreams, you're slightly suggestible, and basically we recreate their dream or their psychedelic vision, for that matter, as an imagined reality. So they'll retell the dream or vision in a hypnagogic state. And at that point, we guide them into a relationship, into getting close enough to the images that are found there that eventually they become absorbed by those images as living entities themselves. So the images become flesh and blood and share a body with the dreamer or the person who's in a visionary state. By anchoring those states in the body, and a typical dream or vision, we might pick up anywhere from 2 to 5 of these anchors, which is what we call the shared body or the embodiment. What we've found is that these images share capacities with us that we don't necessarily have access to in our waking state, and that we can carry through a practice into our day-to-day lives that grow us to own those capacities, at the same time, they're coming from within us. So the dream worker or the embodied imagination practitioner through rapt attention becomes equally infected by this dream world or this visionary world, all the while maintaining a position as an observer. You might notice that this sounds a bit like shamanism, and further on I'll examine how there are parallels between these things. So what is dreaming? Let's just talk a little bit more about what dreaming is, because dreaming is an essential part of human experience in virtually every culture on Earth. Within the world's religious and spiritual traditions, including mysticism and shamanism, there are references and documentation regarding dreams going back throughout recorded history. So let's talk about the collective unconscious. The basis of the practice of embodied imagination is an understanding that the imagery that we experience in dreams is in fact not random, but is sourced from basically all of the psychological aspects of the psyche that are basic to the human condition. So the collective unconscious holds the inherited experiential record of the human species in the form of archetypes or energized symbolic energy. These symbols or images or archetypes are fed up to a level of consciousness in our dreaming. The assumption is in service to the dreamer or the visionary. The problem is that we've lost touch with the language of these images, and so part of the dream working process and the therapeutic process of dream work is coming to understand the language of these images, which is very personal to the person who's having those, experiencing those images, and can be much more deeply understood in an embodied way. What we are very often presented with is information outside of habitual consciousness. So here again, you see the parallels between mystic states or psychedelic states where we are invited to sort of move away from our ego perspective or habitual consciousness to entertain new information. Dreaming also offers us the opportunity to look at them from a perspective of anticipation or compensation. So they might be compensating for what you're experiencing in your everyday life, or they might be an anticipation in the unconscious of some future conscious achievement. Dreams are carriers, essentially, of psychological depth or bearers of the soul. And very frequently, I'll use the terms psyche and soul interchangeably. And finally, dreams are really a means of integration. So these images that are coming up to us from the collective unconscious are allowing us to reintegrate or bring to consciousness information that may have been submerged at a certain time in our life or in difficult moments, or simply that we didn't have access to yet, but that lend to our wholeness or our individuation or becoming better selves, essentially. So what is dreaming? During dreaming, the understanding is that our brains continue to process and problem solve. Studies of cognition and metacognition during sleep find that dreaming and waking experiences are in fact quite similar. Differences found are related to general reality orientation and logical organization. So dreaming is not impaired, but instead it's a difference in reality monitoring. So let's get to how dreams and healing might be related. So one of the aspects that I have found about dream work for healing is that, particularly with embodied methods, but not necessarily, dream work transcends cognitive methods. There is a felt sense in dreaming that there is some import. Every single man, woman, and child on the planet, 365 days of the year, are dreaming. And most of us at some point have had some curiosity, some sense of feeling of what is this about. Additionally, when we can come into a relationship with an understanding of the symbolism and the meaning and the archetypal energy that are held with these dream or visionary images, people are able to sort of embrace and own that more than cognitive methods that are just, I guess a shorter way for me to say that would be, I don't believe that we think our way whole or think our way into healing. Science is now pretty clear as far as looking at things such as the polyvagal system, that we feel our way whole. We feel our way into healing. And this is what's lent by working with dream work. When we participate with our dreams or our visionary experiences, we are in a bold participation with creative visions and images, also mixed with faith and wonder. And this makes a difference. Additionally, unmanageable states are fed to consciousness by our dreams for the purpose of healthy integration. So what I find in dream work, particularly with people who are working through severe states of trauma or depression, is that because of this idea of the imaginary that's held within dream work, they're able to approach topics, subjects, and even felt senses that they're not able to approach in waking life or ordinary consciousness in dream work. And once that's been held in a state of dual consciousness, they can own the fact and still carry the fact that they've worked through that. One of my mentors and the pioneer of embodied imagination, Robert Bosnak, describes it this way. The difference between healthy and unhealthy responses to trauma is in the imaginal distortion or change which begins to occur immediately after the traumatic event. Imagination begins to play with reality in order to dissolve hard to digest chunks of living. So this would be one of the roles of images in dreams. Another factor in healing and dream work, and particularly with embodied practices, is that when neurons fire together in the brain, they wire together. And so it is actually possible to change well-worn paths in our brain functioning, or that are created through our neurotransmitters, by bringing in something new and holding that together with the dysfunctional, I call it ego-syntonic and ego-dystonic states. If you hold those together, what can happen is that you create sort of an exit off of that well-worn path. And very often, our dreams or our visions will provide us with some of both, will provide us with something that really holds the energy of a trauma or of a depression or anxiety, along with the antidote. So mental activity, as we know, creates new neural structures and stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. And the images that we encounter in dreams and visions can allow us to those same functions, essentially. When a memory is activated, a large-scale assembly of neurons and synapses forms an emergent pattern. This also happens when we are actively engaged with our dreaming. And the next time that memory is activated, it tends to bring those same associations with it. So, mysticism. The parallels between dream work, mysticism, and psychedelic experiences are best described by a researcher that I've looked at very deeply, and interestingly enough, his best work comes from 1966. His last name is Panka. And we find that there are universal elements in all mystic experiences throughout cultures. And I find these also in psychedelic experiences in dream work, and I'll share some of them with you. One of them is internal unity. So there's a loss of self without becoming unconscious or very much aware of an undifferentiated unity. There's also a loss of the sense of time and space and feelings of joy, blessedness, and peace as universal elements in the category of positive mood. Sacredness is also a characteristic as one of the experiences, and a palpable sense of awe in the presence of inspiring realities. I both exists and does not exist, and we can simultaneously be the seer and the seen. So another one of my mentors, Stanley Krippner, who I would say is probably one of the most prodigious researchers of shamanism that's still alive, he describes a technology of shamanism that allows for the sharing of data that's not ordinarily available to us. And this data is often portrayed as archetypal images and is accessed by the way of the imagination. It's used in healing, myth making, as well as in devising plans for the future. Stanley says that all dreamers partake in shamanism. And if you consider a shaman as a mediator between the waking and the spirit worlds, which do not communicate through language, but through imagery, you can see where he might have come up with that idea. And this is the experience that I have seen with the clients that I work with, both in psychotherapy as well as in psychedelic integration. So the mystical experience, and this is important, the mystical experience can potentially influence outcomes in therapy. And this is really, I believe, the heart of what both Shauheen and I are talking about here. These mystical experiences that can include features such as oceanic boundlessness, ego dissolution, universal interconnectedness, have also been closely linked to symptom reduction, improved quality of life in areas as diverse as cancer-related distress, substance use disorder, and treatment-resistant depressive disorders. And I'll add to this how beneficial these experiences, whether they are induced by a substance or not, can be for those in palliative care, for those who are also facing end of life. So just to go over again some of the parallels, in dream work, mysticism, and psychedelic experiences, or oneirogenic experiences, we encounter the wisdom of the other. We're offered an opportunity to get out of our own way. We share space and entertain the existence of spirits, symbols, and archetypes. And we experience numinous yet ineffable experiences. Here I want to refer back to my dissertation research just a little bit, because I interviewed people from all over the world who were facing a life-threatening illness, and a life-threatening illness could be anything from addiction or depression to cancer or some other life-threatening illness. And they used dream work in conjunction with their treatments. And some of the results that came out of this research were quite striking to me, because I believed that I was going to see that dream work or embodied imagination is an amazing treatment for PTSD, and that it should be a part of an integrative treatment protocol, essentially, for those who are facing end of life. But what I found was that the spiritual aspects of dream work were actually just as important to the people who I was interviewing. They came away with a sense that the images and experiences that they encountered while doing embodied imagination or through dream work were non-arbitrary, that they were very much directed at their specific issues, including facing their own mortality, that there were healing. They came away understanding that there were healing resources available to them beyond medicine. Also, and I see this very often with psychedelic integration as well, that there's deep value in exploring the dark or the difficult. And I'll say a little bit more about that, because of that idea that I was talking about, where what fires together wires together. When we encounter difficult images, or frightening even images in visionary or dream states, our ego perspectives or our habitual consciousness may have some idea about what is held or meant by those that is not, in fact, why those images are being presented to us. And so there's real value in exploring them in a way that removes our habitual consciousness. So through an embodiment practice, or through examining what your associations are to that, and allowing it to live with whatever other aspects there may be of that vision. I would say everyone described the images that they met in their visionary experiences or dreams as divine companions, and some of them really had intense access to these companions even 8-10 years after having done the dream work or the embodied imagination work, which was really really beautiful to experience even in the interviews with them. So I wanted to just touch, and I'll try and do this quickly because I see I'm coming towards the end of my time, but I wanted to touch quickly on the concept of dream incubation or intentional dreaming, because I believe that it relates very much to also how we can interact with some of these oneirophrenic or supplements and psychedelic medicine. Obviously, people talk a lot about intention setting. So dream incubation was based in ancient Greek Asclepian practices. It turns out that there was also a demigod in Egypt called Imhotep, who also is frequently associated with Asclepius, and who also created dream healing sanctuaries or temples. And basically, dream incubation is an acknowledgement of the two-way relationship between our waking life and our dream life. And I view this hypnagogic state as sort of the bridge that allows that two-way relationship to happen. So in dream incubation, we set an intention to be in communication with our dreams. So there are many, many practices, and I won't have time to go into all of that here, but there are many, many practices for setting your intentions, for setting the environment. And there are substances that we can ingest that increase our ability to be in that kind of communication, to be more awake in that dream state. You can also create rituals to work with your dreams and symbols corresponding to a topic that you want to address. In other words, you can sort of take a question or an image that you hold in your waking life and bring it into your dreams or visions for a response. And I'll say, because I referenced it earlier in my cancer treatment, I was very actively seeking out help in getting through the chemo, through the radiation, through the angst, and very much getting responses through the practice of embodied imagination that were incredibly helpful to me. Also, through the practice of dream incubation and basically establishing your desire to have that bridge open, that two-way communication with your dream life, your ability to remember your dreams increases. So incubated dreams are like pearls that emerge from the depths of your soul. Dream incubation is a gentle way to invite cooperation from the dream realm and focus healing in a specific direction. And over the past, I'd say 15 years, I've just seen incredible results in this practice of dream incubation for any number of types of questions or physical ailments. And then finally, I'll touch on integration. So I view oneirogenic journeys or psychedelic journeys as the middle, that middle place, that mundus imaginalis. And I believe that it is necessary that we support those experiences on either side, that there's basically these wings of support. One of them is adequate preparation, which can look like integration, one of them is adequate preparation, sorry, getting ahead of myself, and the other side is integration. And integration is, okay, so I've just had this dream or this vision or this psychedelic experience, and now what? Because these experiences can expose us to a lot of information. And as I mentioned also earlier, information that's been submerged for one reason or another into our unconscious. We can be presented with shadow material. And again, this is not a topic that I can go into at any depth in this venue, but these are parts of ourselves that we've rejected or relegated to darkness, and that we can very often find that we project on others. These things can be integrated in very beautiful ways when approached intentionally. Sometimes these experiences can open a Pandora's box of memories, false or otherwise, of traumas or long forgotten experiences, and we need to know how to sort of manage those things as we go forward. When we bring all of these pieces together that present themselves in these visions or oneirogenic states, we really are presented with an opportunity to bring them together to create wholeness and a more balanced sense of self. Also, I think that the process of integration will help us to protect this moment that we are currently in, where we have the opportunity to work with these incredible plant and medicine allies and safely. Additionally, integration helps us to understand the healer within, because most of what we're being presented with in these experiences are coming from ourselves, the collective unconscious, our own souls, and that's truly empowering to understand. So what's next? I think I'll leave that for Shauheen to talk about. I just want to say that I hope to bring all of the experience that I have to bear on helping to understand the protocols that are necessary around these kinds of experiences that we're having. And yeah, I feel like fairly complete. just touched on so many things, but I'm so curious to hear all of your impressions, and thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I'm going to turn it back over to Shauheen.
Thank you so much, Katherine. Thanks. Okay, I'm gonna just if you can stop sharing, maybe I can. Yep. Okay, great, awesome. Thank you. Okay, so I'm gonna just walk you through a few more slides, just have an announcement, and then we'll open it up to Q&A, and then we invite you, like there's some questions in the chat box. I'll try to go based on those, but feel free to open up your video and mic, and then we can go one by one and then have this discussion for the next maybe 20 minutes. So from here, I'm kind of sharing a little bit about the work that we have done with these supplements. First of all, again, when we pivot in, I think it was in August 2022, from going through a FDA path of trial and all the kind of hardship around raising capital, all of those, we decided that let's just see how we can work with these compounds and then bring them immediately to people. So it was very fortunate that these oneirogens are actually legal in the United States and most of the countries. I recently even checked that they are even legal in some of the like most of the Middle Eastern region, which is very nice because they're also culturally very relevant. So from here, I just like very quickly walking you through some of the slides. So they basically, our company that we started like building these compounds from naturally driven plants and fungi is called Vicena. So our idea from the beginning was basically just like we're designing brain and mental wellness solutions through the revival of ancestral Eastern medicine plus practices. So this is where we would love to work with more practitioners. We don't want to just like kind of like provide only a substance. The substance, even from the ancestral use, has been always within the context of a practice of a ritual. And then for basically our methodology here has been, as you saw, like basically looking into the ancient Eastern ritualistic use of these natural medicine for healing, as well as bringing modern science from translation on neurobiology to neuroimaging to bioinformatics to kind of get into, we call them these experiential supplements that we have. So this is a very simple kind of like trail of how we did this. That we went through the Chinese, Persian, Buddhist, Hindu, kind of like there's a lot of Chinese medicine involved mostly because of the work of my co-founder, John, who is not here today. And then the journey started from here, then basically then looking into ancestral best practices for ethnopharmacology. It's very interesting. Like if you look into these ancestrally, you really have 1,000 years of human trial. This is way more, providing way more information than a trial with 30 people or even with 50 people. Or at least like you can get some gist of the effect, specifically when it comes to psychoactive compounds. Here we looked into the canon of medicine from Avicenna, the Shannon, Benjiao Jing, which has the kind of like his book, which is like a medicine book, and then Gotha, Avesta, and then like looking into different plants, extraction, which is actually coming from my background as a chemical engineer. Then this is actually the technology that we built for high throughput, high yield extraction, then all the way through kind of purification and crystallization to get to kind of like very pure compounds. From there, then the study around drug discovery and development starts, which mostly for us was around has been around in vitro study and also in silico studies. We had some in vitro and then mostly in vivo, which has been the trials, like low cost trials. And then we're actually getting ourselves ready, to get 3 of our formulation through human trial with a very reputable university to be able to have more reliable clinical data as efficacy, to publish. So This is actually Neo, who was helping us from MIT Media Lab, in terms of how we created some codes on how to actually get these data, the brainwave, heart rates, most of the biomarkers that we got to collect during that very intense period of data collection to get to design what we have today, as some of our formulation for Magi Ancestral Supplements. But this slide, actually, this is one of our slides for our investors, but it's very interesting. I wanted to bring this up on here. So from beta-carbolines, they are not only beta-carbolines, there are other compounds in our formulations, but the way that they are working is that it's very interesting. Like they have this very neurophysiological properties, as I shared, around neuroprotection, neurogenesis, like many other anti-inflammatory, that there are like in a mind and a brain level, we call them basically just this is on the left side, which again, the dose is not that high for us to feel the psychoactive effect, but still they're working on our neural system. Neurolongevity is a big one of that, as I told you, around anti-aging. Our formulation, we actually had a very interesting discovery around memory, that is result coming out soon, and also the sleep recovery, which we thought that we actually we saw with a very different hypothesis, and our data got us somewhere else. But is actually our sleep. We call it a deep sleep, but it's actually like a restful sleep. Supplement is one there that we have. And then when it gets from the brain stage, which is more neurophysiological, the mind stage, like we get toward the psyche stage. These are where we can have these oneirogens, helping with anxiety, with basically overcoming grief, self-discovery and self-realization. And on higher doses, as you probably might have tried it also with ayahuasca, then it kind of gets, I call it the layer of psyche and esprit. Then that's where we get these personal meaningful experiences, like for example oceanic boundaryless or mystical the proof of mystical phenomena, which is also very interesting. If we can, let's say, have a very standardized dose to enroll people to have that. So with that, I think this is kind of like, it was November 2022 that we kind of had a soft launch of, actually at that point we had 4 compounds. We started with micro and mini just to stay away from any acute result, specifically around, mostly around, throwing up of any nausea, as it was a question in the chat box. But what we have here is actually we followed the, Ancestral Magi is a brand, is kind of like a consumer brand that was launched early in 2023 in the US. We're only selling in the US, inspired by wisdom of ancient, Zoroastrian priests in Iran of using Haoma, just kind of like mostly based on beta-carbolines, but for different formulation, then we added different plants from the Eastern medicine, mostly from Chinese medicine, also from, the medicine, of the work that Avicenna has done, and kind of more basically just very advanced information from Huberman lab, and everything that we have been able to concoct to get a very optimal effect. So these compounds are legal. Everything that we have are legal. They're made in the US, and they're actually, the seeds are grown in the US, in Texas, and we have a lab in Oklahoma. They are non-scheduled by the DEA. We call them the cognitive, and I call them also an intuition enhancing compounds. They are neuroprotective. Currently, we have 6 products. They're available for shipments in the US. We have had so many requests from Europe. We're also looking into kind of Middle East and North Africa as well, again, because of their relevance, cultural relevance. Our supplements are also available in the Alchemist Kitchen, like Apothecary Store and Elixir Bar in New York City. That's the only store. So these are the 6. I'm not sure, maybe you've had a chance to take a look into the website, but I just wanted to walk you through this. So then the deep sleep, the Horvatat, the names are also actually coming from, basically, these are very meaningful names from Zoroastrian context. Amertat and Horvatats are our microdoses. This is helping with neurogenesis, neuroprotection, also memory. Our deep sleep is mostly helping with sleep restfulness. These are, we call them mini doses. The effect are very mild. They're not there's no psychoactive effect. The deep sleep, they usually take it like about like half an hour before going to bed. Neurogenesis, you can do it any time during the day. And then the other three on the left, the lucid dream or the dreaming, is more like I'll share more about that. And also Katherine has this, the product that Katherine actually really likes. And then Start, which is our meditation supplement, and Ushta, which is our mood boost supplement. So these are more, the effects are more about like 1 hour to like less than 2 hours. They're very mild. We call them the mini doses. And then this pouch on the right side is actually borrowing its name from the ancient Haoma, which is our revelation aid, which, following with the phenomenology of the dreamlike states that I shared, this is really helping to kind of like have that that aha moment, you know, like this needs a setting of 3 to 6 hours. You have to be prepared for it, and then it may come, you know, with some nausea for some people, like, and then some people have been very easy with it. So one direction that we are getting with these supplements are, some of them, as I said, are more neurophysiological. For example, these three, the neurogenesis, dream, and then mood boost, they're mostly like sits within the realm of supplements. But the other three they are not only a supplement, they have to be a supplement and a practice. You know, this is where before we really open up, you know, our marketing to wider kind of consumer base, we decided to actually reach out to practitioners, because as Katherine actually shared, like this, they basically working with these oneirogens and working with these states need like kind of proper mindset and like being on a path, I would say. So my personal mission is really psycho-spiritual wellness for everybody, you know, as we walk through their life. And I think that, let's say, there are so many people that they do meditate on a daily basis. There are people that it's very difficult for them to sit in meditation. So these meditation supplements is always helping with, you know, this state of unfocusedness. It's kind of like it doesn't allow the mind to really wander around. It just helps you just to be present. Our dream supplement, even though it's called lucid dreaming, is really provides that liminal state that you feel that lucidity of being awake and remember your dream. It helps to dream a lot as well. And so that's also a mini dose. And but the practice of lucid dreaming is really a practice. This is again another area that, let's say, if you want to take the control and agency in your dream, you have to be able to work with these compounds. And then actually this year in Denver, in conjunction with the Psychedelic Science Conference, the MAPS conference, we actually launched our Revelation Aid, which is designed to create that hypnagogic state that is prone, that actually provides that potential for the mind to have that shift or that leap of consciousness, just for us to be able to receive something from the unconscious. This is very interesting. I always, when we talk about the dream, the hero's journey, and then basically facing the unknown. So usually when we walk into life, like the hero's journey comes through what happens to us. But this is a very intentional way of doing the hero's journey in a very, I would say, controlled volume, you know, for us to be able to open ourselves to these experiences. And with this, these are a few announcements, and then let's just get to our Q&A. So first of all, we would love to work with you. That's why we had this session today. So there is a questionnaire that is kind of like an engagement form that will be sent to you as a follow-up email that we'd love you to kind of fill out and share about, like, what is your interest, you know, in this space, and how we can probably work with each other. For those of you who are in the United States and Puerto Rico, we apologize to the rest of the participants today. For now, we only ship in the US. For you to, if you haven't really tested our product yet, like, there is a 30% discount. We have some trial packs that they are coming with 5 capsules. And then they are allowing you to be able to work with these supplements to see how they are working. And so this 30% discount, there is this coupon, it's called Magi TP Partners. You can use it to place an order And just one caveat here. So like we are going to have a 1 week of a delay in our shipments. So it's mostly because of the Martin Luther King holiday. So if you want to place an order and receive it within the week, please do the order before 9 p.m. Pacific time today. Otherwise, if you place the order within the next week, then everything would be shipped after the Martin Luther King Day. And then they're valid for 30 days. And so we would love you to help us spread this realm of oneirogens and hypnagogens, and then kind of develop these protocols. This is one of the very interesting projects then we have with Katherine. We are, as Katherine shared about, like how to work with these, like integration of these like dream body with the pictures or the images that you have had. How we can integrate the oneirogens into this experience. This is something that is very unexplored, and it would be very interesting to have more feedback from more practitioners. And if you work, let's say, if you have these supplements, you can work with your clients and then receive more feedback and share with us and contribute. That would be awesome. And last but not least, like we have a lot of content about our work. Most there are lots of podcasts, articles. They're accessible through our website and also our social media. And please follow us on Ancestral Magi on social media. With that, I would love to thank you so much, everybody, for coming with us for this 2-hour intense. And would love you if you want to join for any Q&A. We are more than happy to have you over, and then maybe we can start with some of these questions, but feel free to open your camera and your mic, and then we can go from there. Oh, by the way, I wanted to thank Tanya, our MC. I know that like she went through probably a very difficult and tough time of trying to figure this out, but everything was cool with a very cool community. So thank you. Sorry for the stress. Okay, so I'm gonna share this, and let's go with some of these questions, and then we can go from there. I'll just scroll up. You were at the beginning, and it's the detail. Okay, so I love that some of the questions are already been answered. Is this recorded? Is this recorded? Yes, this will be recorded, and we most probably will put it on our YouTube. So you're gonna have access to this talk later on too. Are harmine and harmaline the same and related? Harmine and harmaline are different compounds, and they actually have one double bond difference with each other. And then when it's kind of like it's broken, it becomes harmaline. When two bond is broken, it becomes tetrahydroharmine. And it's interestingly, their effects are very different. Can we have a copy of the slides? It's gonna be basically a video, so that you're gonna have access to the video. Thank you so much for all of you who shared your love here. And let's see, I've read research papers where some harmala compounds are basically are abortive and has traditionally used such. That's true. And then other papers say harmala heals fertility. Do you know the qualities of harmala with this respect? So as far as I know, what is effort deficient is, and it's real, most of the animals, they don't even touch, they don't eat, these kind of these flowers, because they know that they're effort deficient and they may lose their fetus. So it's mostly harmaline. And I'm not much sure about if harmine is also, effort deficient, but I would say that like if anybody is kind of like is doubting about being pregnant in a woman, like I recommend not to take it, or at least not to take it early on. And mostly harmaline, because ayahuasca, I have been in this like ayahuasca session that somebody with 9 months, was actually drank with us. But ayahuasca has a very little, harmaline in it. It's mostly harmine and tetrahydroharmine. And one other thing about harmala, Peganum harmala, is that Peganum harmala actually has a lot of very toxic alkaloids too. So That is why, for example, drinking the tea, making a brew, or even like basically just even having the seeds could be toxic. So what we have with our supplements, they're all API grade different harmonic compounds. So we are actually we are not using all the alkaloids. The full spectrum at high doses could be toxic. There's a lot of toxicology data available about Peganum harmata. And nightmares, essentially, I leave the question about nightmares to Aryan. Thank you to Catherine. Yes, the rite of passage is exactly, I didn't know what the real rite of passage mean. You have always heard about it, but the rite of passage is really that leap of consciousness that happens. And Vahid is Sufi scholar that talks about Sufis and the use of psychedelic. That's awesome. I would love to get this link. Are there ways to avoid nausea and vomiting when using beta-carbolines? So this nausea, it's very interesting from our population that participated in our clinical study. I was the only one that I always vomited. There were so many other participants that none of them didn't like. They were all fine. And interestingly, I'm not sure if Jess, our friend, is here, but Jess had actually one of our supplements, like she got actually a double dose and she was totally fine. She had the most amazing experience. So it is this sense of nausea and vomiting is very personal. It's kind of exactly that intra-patient variability that the number is about 50%. 50% of the people, they feel nausea and 50% they don't. But the way to kind of just avoid it is always going for lower dose. So I know exactly what's my dose. If I go beyond it, I have a very nice experience. Otherwise, I have it in my stomach until I vomit. So my experience I think I read that about basically just having the purge as part of the experience, a similar experience. Thank you. Thanks for having the discussion. Thanks, Nasreen, and work personally, Mang and Haoma. Oh, Catherine, awesome. So Catherine actually has worked with a few of our compounds. How do we connect with Magi supplement with reference rather than just another product to use or consume? Does the fact that these supplements are rather than the full spectrum takes away from this type of relational experience? And how do we reconcile this? No, not really. It's interesting because even Magi, when they were mixing these, they were like the part of this is always the extraction. The pestle and mortar was part of is basically the sign of making Haoma. So interesting, it was never a full, like even in Amazon, it's an extract. In Iran, it was also an extract. Like how they were getting to these specific compounds, that was the medicine man. That was what the Magi, that was what Noges knew. For example, in the even Haoma has also been used, for example, for warriors to go to war. So, but for warriors, definitely, I'm not sure like if a dreamy state, substance would be the right one. It could be, let's say, in that case, an ephedra or ephedrine, compound. So, as you see, in different settings, they knew that they were using different plant, and it was not just one plant that fits all. Are there any contradiction of these compounds? Is there an accumulative effect? So if you mean the molecules, so the molecules, no, like it taps you into different subjective states. It's exactly like you get this brew of ayahuasca, you feel this way, you get the other brew, you may feel the other way. And then the other question is for Catherine. This has been working, and Shauheen, Tyler, I was wondering if you could comment on synergistic effect of Syrian Rue as an MAOI activating DMT in acacia variety, similar to ayahuasca, acacia being available in Mediterranean. I read intriguing research paper on this. Yes, the work of Benny Shannon actually is very, if you have done that research, like there was this idea that acacia was kind of like an ayahuasca in the Middle East. But specifically in Iran, it's very related to my thoughts are more around like if they were mixing it with ephedra. It's kind of like making ayahuasca beta-carbolines with an MDMA effect. So again, there is that receptor bindings around the 5-HT2A, 2B that provides that sense, and also kind of like the oneirogenic or hypnagogic state that these compounds create. But yeah, the esoteric tradition, I think the esotericism or mysticism has been always somehow, intertwined with this hypnagogic states. You don't need to use a substance, like you do zikr, in Sufism, or you do turning, or you do, let's say in Zazen or in Vipassana, you just sit in meditation, you induce that dreamlike state, to be able for the thoughts to stay away, and then for in consciousness, for us to be able to directly connect with the unconscious. Jess, with Haoma, as a veteran, I would love to bring awareness to supplement. Thank you, Jess. Thank you. Okay, so if the seeds are toxic, is it better to use the bark and leaves? Well, there is no bark. Basically, it's just, as you see, there was an image, these are like very like bushes. It's like exactly the picture behind me. So I've never really worked with those. I don't know what are, most of my knowledge comes from the seeds and what are the other alkaloids in the seeds. So Noor is asking, where do we find the engagement form? The engagement form, they're going to be with Eventbrite, or with a direct email from Magi Ancestral Supplement. We'll send you the engagement form and also the code again for you to have it in your inbox. I'm curious whether you have come across any literature psychedelics in use in Iraq. Well, yeah, I guess there is, in this region, there's been so many practices. It's been like later on these bound kind of like borders have just separated them. But I would say, you just have to probably look into some of these ancient practices. I'm not sure if you know about the Mandais, or this is another kind of like a small religion on the southwest of Iran. It's close to Basra in Iraq, that they are kind of like baptizing with water as well. So I know that they also adopted a lot, from Zoroastrianism, but I don't know if there is intoxication in that context or not. Any health condition that might preclude some from using these supplements? If you're pregnant, definitely don't use it. And also, if you are on antidepressants, specifically SSRIs, we recommend you not to take them, or at least like to talk to us. Or sometimes they are at lower doses. They might be synergistic, but sometimes it could be, again, the MAOI effect might be a problem. Are there people who should not take these supplements? I think that was the same question. The discount code gets removed at the checkout page. Doesn't work. So the discount code is only valid for they are not valid for the full stacks. They're only for these trial packs. So if that was the question, that is the issue. Any experiences using these in any combination with psilocybin as a ayahuasca? Yes. That's also a very interesting. We did a lot of research on that area. If you want to try that, it depends on like what dose you want to do. If you want to, let's say, do a let's say 2 grams of mushroom, which is about 10 milligrams of psilocybin. So we recommend you to take let's say take it with one of our Haoma supplements. Or if you, again, there's another experience that you can have with basically just 2 grams of mushrooms, or again, 10 milligrams of psilocybin with 3 of our start supplements. So we have tested these, multiple times, and they are creating a very interesting and a smooth and nice effect. Shrooms naturally contain MAOI, all in their own. Yes, they have beta-carbolines. I'm not sure if they all have or not, but is there trial packs for Haoma Revelation? No, we don't have a trial pack for Haoma Revelation. This is kind of like mostly an issue around fulfillment. So anyway, what ordering timing is your 3 start price done? What ordering? Just take it together. Or maybe you can take it like 15 minutes before psilocybin, but you can take it, if you're taking it with a start, yeah, just either together or just like maybe 15 minutes before taking the mushrooms also works. Yeah, like I want to, I guess I just went through all the questions here. If you want to have, if you have any question, please just raise your hand and we'll be happy to answer. And sorry, I just didn't answer the Catherine's question side, but I'll leave it to her if you want to bring it up.
I put my website and my contact info also in the chat in case anyone wants to contact me directly with any of those questions. I see that there's a question from Nasreen, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly.
Hi, Catherine. Yeah, it's Nasreen. Thank you so much. I've got so many questions for you, both of you, but just to keep it brief, the process of embodied imagination and working with, I don't know which one of these particular mini doses you would be suggesting, but what does that look like? Is that a one-to-one session? Is that a series? How long does it last? I'm just really curious from a facilitator perspective what that looks like.
Sure. So embodied imagination is a guided practice. It's a guided dream work practice, or it's a guided practice for helping people integrate their psychedelic or neurogenic experiences. So it's generally a one-on-one practice. We're training people, the school trains people, facilitators, therapists, nurses, doulas. We're training all kinds of people how to use embodied imagination with their clients, but it's generally a one-on-one practice because the person is guided into a hypnagogic state, and then the person is guided to basically share a body with various images for incredible information, and so it's a craft. Yeah.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm assuming then that training, does that include like some Jungian psychology and archetypal like interpretation for you as a facilitator? Yeah.
Okay. Exactly.
Great. I'll be looking that up. Thank you.
Thanks. That's
Thank you.
Any other questions? So I put the code again in the chat, but one more time, are you aware of any group ceremonies with SPAN? No, I am not, but I know that there are so many people kind of like trying it on their own. So just one more time, so the code is Magi TP partners, Magi TP partners, and I'm not sure if Jess is here, but I would love, I wanted to share a little bit about kind of like some of these experiences, but then I thought that maybe our participants are wherever, you know, from this group has tested them, they can share their own experience. Or maybe I can leave it to Catherine. Catherine, you want to share a little bit about Magi? About Mang.
And Shauheen, can you hear me? I'm on.
Yeah.
If you want me to share as well, happy to do that
Awesome.
after Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, Catherine, can you go first?
Yeah, I'll just share briefly that I've had the opportunity to work with both Mang and with Haoma, and what I'm especially fond of Mang. I will say that, you know, I hear a lot of people saying that it's a lucid dreaming supplement, but I would be a little bit cautious with that because lucid dreaming is a practice. It might facilitate your progress in that practice, but I don't know that it's just going to make you lucid in a dream. However, for me, I found that Mang is incredible for sort of being awake in the dream, sort of having another element of being in the dream while I'm sleeping that made me more receptive to receiving what the dream was sharing with me. And I also found that my dream recall was just amazing, off the charts, better than usual with Mang. And I would also say that I sleep more deeply with Mang, even if I don't sleep long, although I sleep long, but even if I have a shorter sleep, I feel more rested when I wake up from dreaming with Meng. Sometimes with my active dream life, wake up, I don't feel quite rested because I feel like I've been very busy. This gives you a very rested form of dreaming, a lot of dream recall. And for me, the experience was almost like astral travel, where I was really able to be in communication in a very receptive way to everything that was being presented to me in a dream state. With Haoma, it's a little bit closer to an entheogenic experience, at least for me. I can only speak for me. And what was most fascinating, and I hope it's okay for me to share this, was that there were a lot of parallels with a recent experience with Eva, which is an African plant medicine and is considered also to be an oneirogen. And in fact, there was some carryover from that journey to my experience with Haoma. So very beautiful, very gentle, the actual journey itself. And I will say in all transparency that I am one of that percentage of people that really struggled with nausea and vomiting. But the journey was amazing. It's that whole thing of the journey was amazing. And with many of these medicines, vomiting or a purge is part and parcel of what you experience. So yeah, that's the short version. I really appreciate Meng and actually believe that it would be very beneficial to the dream work that I do and that I teach. In fact, hint, hint, maybe there's going to be a collaboration with Magi, because I think that for those professionals who want to incorporate dream work into their practice or psychedelic integration, having a supplement like Meng that brings so much more recall could be beneficial to the practice of healing with dream work.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Katherine. I get nausea too. But maybe Jess also. Jess has been taking our Haoma very regularly. Jess, can you hear us? Hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Apologies, I am not camera ready, so I'm going to spare you all. So my first experience with Haoma was in Labor Day of 2023. I had met Shauheen at ESPD 55 in the UK, but wasn't really familiar with the Magi supplements, and was able to meet him again at the Psychedelic Science Conference, and was introduced to the supplements, so to speak with him more. And so I tried it. I am not, I'm kind of new to using psychedelics, have my own, childhood trauma, PTSD, mild traumatic brain injury when I was, 16 from a motor vehicle accident. So, we're really doing a lot of self-work, self-healing. But there was always this level of intellectualizing for me of, okay, this is what I need to do to calm my anger responses or to work through certain triggers. And it was all, I felt like, on the surface, but there was a disconnect. And I found that Haoma, it was a very, and Katherine, you said it very well, it was a very gentle experience. I don't mind telling you all, I misread the package. So there are 2 macro doses that come in a package, and I read it that it was that I needed to take both. I think I saw or read what I wanted to read. So I took both pills at the same time, and it was very wow. I was lying on a bed and I just cried. I wept, but I saw things so clearly. And I must say that I spent Labor Day weekend. I did only took Haoma without any other substance. Followed it up in the next day with the 2 grams of psilocybin, not because I consulted with Shauheen, but that was a plan of mine, was just to have a heart and a head opener. And the results were just tremendous. I actually came home. My children, who are 11 and 13, were like, "Mom, you've changed so much just over the weekend." I gave myself time to integrate. After these experiences, I started writing down and journaling, what I was processing. And, since then have just had a lot of success. I recently went on an ayahuasca um, retreat to Brazil. Shauheen was there. And from that, there was a lot of things that come up from that. You're still working through. It's a process. But I recently took Haoma again and reached out to him. I took the proper dose this time. I only did the 1 pill, but it was, I do feel that I look at it as an integrator. And it's not something that I look to, abuse or to overuse, but every 6 weeks or so, when I feel like, hey, I'm getting overwhelmed and I really need a reset for myself, I look to that. I'm also in therapy. I'm not on any SSRIs, but it's something that I use routinely in my own practice and self-healing and meditating. So really just appreciate the opportunity to share. Thank you, Shauheen.
Thanks so much, Jess. Very, very helpful. I think Tanya also has tried our meditation stuff. And Tanya, do you want to also maybe share a little bit if...
Sure, I can share a little bit. I tried the starred supplement. I tried 1 capsule once and it had a very mild effect. But that was still very useful in the meditation, where I found that going into the meditation, it was almost like a surprise to have so many clear breaths, really to have like a kind of monkey mind disappear very quickly. But it was on a mild level. And so the next time I tried 2 capsules, and that was actually even more, that was, I think, perfect for me and for my practice. And I really, it allowed me to have a very deep meditation very quickly, to enter the meditation very quickly. And I've had a sitting meditation practice for a long time. I tend to do more a Sufi whirling practice, and we sometimes also include sitting meditation as part of that practice. But this made me want to ritualize and get back into having meditation practice at home on my own, on an ongoing, in an ongoing way. And that when I had the meditation that was very, very clear, many clear breaths, it also kind of included a catharsis. Like I had kind of a moment where I just started weeping as well, and then the weeping also became almost like a chanting weeping, like a zikr. That was like a rhythmic weeping. It was very beautiful, very cathartic, and for me, the start is a very powerful supplement that if people want to incorporate that and also help to ensure that their meditation practice continues in a way that is consistent, I think it's really useful for that. So I really appreciated the start. I haven't tried the Mang yet, but it's on my night table. Look forward to that too.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Tanya. I have been trying to answer some of these questions in the chat box, but please feel free if you have any other questions from Katherine or from me, just drop it in the mail or in the chat box, or just feel free to open your mic. Let's maybe give it a few more seconds. So maybe one last follow-up. So something that I think it would be we wanted to share with you is that as Katherine said, for example, many of these dream integration kind of therapy has been around for a while, but working with oneirogens or hypnagogens, and when to incorporate them, this is a study and protocols that we are working on its development. So I think that's an area that's pretty underdeveloped and understudied, and while like sexiness of psychedelics are kind of leading the wave, with currently, I think there's a lot of work to be done in this space with beta-carbolines, and if when we shared that questionnaires, we would love to, if you're interested to participate in any of these studies, please let us know. Also, if you want to, let's say, work with your clients. So ideally, we thought that if we enroll practitioners, then they know how to kind of work with their own clients, and that's a way better kind of positioning of these products rather than just directly selling them to consumers. Is high blood pressure a contradiction? High blood pressure. Actually, I need to check this, but I don't think that's an issue because they are usually dropping the blood pressure. But don't take this from me. I can check it with our MD, in-house MD. My psychotherapy practice is with old adult, lots of life existential question, well, concern related to cognitive decline. Any recommendation? Definitely. I think our Neurogenesis is a supplement that I recommend everybody to take it. Like just how harmine, it's very rich in harmine, and how harmine is working on different levels is just miraculous. My own sister actually is suffering from a side effect of taking antipsychotic for a long term. And her own, based on the research that I've done, we did like the most leading like a psychopharmacologist. Actually, beta-carbolines are one of those areas, one of those substances that can help her. But she's very into I would say pharmaceutical drugs, and just my job, actually one of the reasons I'm here is actually trying to help her get to work with these compounds. But I would say if there are existential, let's say, thoughts or distress about death, definitely, like some of these compounds can help them. Again, it has to be checked, what are their conditions, like palliative cares, and also if there is cognitive decline, I definitely suggest our neurogenesis, which is called Amertat, to everybody, like even to young people, because that slows down the decline and this is neuroprotective. Katherine left her information here. Again, I'll send it to everybody. I saw a few messages, about a problem with putting the supplements. I just put our email here, please. It's called it's support. It's very easy. Support at ancestralmagi.com. If there was any issue with placing an order or working with the coupon, the discount code, please let us know. And I'm gonna send you that follow-up email in the next hour. So you're gonna have the link to the practitioners questionnaires, and we can stay in touch through that. Support at ancestralmagi.com. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. If there's no more questions, I would love, Katherine, do you have anything to add? Just to
Yes, I
wrap
do.
up.
I just really want to say thank you to you, Shauheen, for your work and for bringing this incredible medicine to our attention, and for all of the potential that's held there. I'm super excited about it, and the work and the passion that you bring to it, along with your own ancestry, is very evident. So I just want to share, thank you for bringing me in to share whatever it is that I can contribute. And thank you all for coming and for your time and attention.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Katherine. Thanks, everybody. It was such a great pleasure to be in your presence and to have your interest and passion about this ancestral plant. And this is a space for mindfulness, and everybody who is coming and joining, they're coming really with their heart. And it's an absolute pleasure to have this experience of connecting with every single one of you. And I'm here available if you have any questions, and looking forward to working with you all. Thanks again. Bye, everybody. Bye.